Okay, can I start? Okay. Hi and welcome. Erik Wallin is my name. I work at a company called Iden that makes a platform based on the RealEstateCore Ontology that I will just give a brief introduction to today. I will just start to talk a little bit about the RealEstateCore. How many of you in here are familiar with or have been using a tool such as Protégé? Only a couple, okay. That is mandatory requirements, I think, for this presentation. Now, Protégé is one of the open source tools for creating OWL ontologies. How many of you have been working with RDF or OWL or ontologies in any way? Yeah, that's more. What tools do you use then? Top-Raid Composer or are you just implementing ontologies? Or are you designing ontologies? Anyone designing ontologies here? You're implementing ontologies then? Just to check so I can see where you are. RealEstateCore is an ontology that is made for property owners. Very specifically, property owners such as the ones that owns big real estates, residential or commercial or public real estates. And the purpose of it is that is to enable the control over the buildings, to do that in a scalable fashion. And RealEstateCore differs to some extent from many other ontologies. That is, it's extremely pragmatic. It has a very straightforward. We have this kind of philosophy that we can't make all property owners change their data schemas for all their systems they have in their buildings. But instead we have to map. We have to put great effort into to map to existing ontologies. And basically, the end game is a little bit that we want to be a part, we as property owners wants to be a part of the smart city. How many of you have been working with smart cities projects or implementations? Quite a few. Yeah. I'm quite active in smart cities initiatives, both from when it comes from an academic perspective, but also when it comes from a commercial perspective. And since I feel so associated with the property owners, I'm usually the only one in the audience that represents the actual property owners, and I think this is a huge discrepancy, because if you go out here in the city and you turn around a little bit, you see it's quite many buildings in the city. Most smart city initiatives are just built around connecting the public transportation system and doing that kind of other things. So that's why. Why we need the RealEstateCore ontology. And more specifically, the RealEstateCore ontology has its roots in BIM, as in Building Information Management. I don't know if you've seen it in any, if you're familiar with IFC, with the standard. Pick any science fiction movie with Tom Cruise in it, and he's crawling around and looking at his iPad on some digital twin of a building. That is BIM. All the building automation systems. In this kind of building, a commercial, quite high-tech building, you could count up to probably 15 different building automation systems. Everything from elevators to climate to alarm systems, access systems. And then we also have the IoT systems. And I would say that these three standard domains are the one that drives the daily operations for a property owner. And what RealEstateCore does is that it actually bridges over these three major domains. And and the end game is to create a knowledge graph for the property owner, and then to connect the knowledge graph with a couple of familiar ones as you see here. You could basically see the one of the big driving forces for a property owner is to actually take control over the building, to enable all this fantastic services that you, again, you can see in, pick any science fiction movie on how the life should be when you are entering a building. So, what does RealEstateCore look like? It's beautiful, isn't it? This is on a third level collapsing level. So there are 3 more levels under this. You could say that when you start looking at metrics on ontologies, you could see that how many classes do you have, how many different properties do you have, how many individuals, etc. And I would say that when you're looking at RealEstateCore ontology compared to many others, it's starting to grow, and of course you can do extremely much more complex ones, but we are actually starting to get quite good expressivity with RealEstateCore. And one thing with RealEstateCore is, I will probably get back to this, is that it's modular. I was talking before that we have the problem with that we need to interact with all of these 15 systems, old systems within the buildings. Then everyone is putting in lots of new IoT systems, and we are supposed to connect this to all the public transportation, weather forecasting services, you name it, all this kind of web services things. So you're starting to see that you have quite many different data sources that you should connect in order to actually fulfill this smart city objective. And then you start to see that you can't really say that you have like one class of property owners. I mean, you have so many types of property owners. Not just only the commercial ones, but you have the property owners that owns this conference exhibition properties. You have the ones that owns all the healthcare, the hospitals. That's totally different kind of. A little bit annoying, but I guess I can live with it if you can live with it. And the other way to handle this problematic situation is that you modularize the ontology. That means that you could load it. The one we were looking on before was the full ontology, but you can choose to load different modules. This makes it also very easy to make your own dialects. When you're looking at, for example, building, within the building module in the RealEstateCore ontology, you have room types. And when we did this one first, we had laboratory. Then the owner of all the university buildings in Sweden joined the consortium, and they have, I think, 7 different types of laboratories. Which means that, and that might not be so useful for another commercial type, but then again, they could do a dialect of their own in the ontology. And this has turned out to be extremely strong. This also means that when you're doing the development of the ontology, as example, my company, when we are doing something, as you can see grayed out there, for example, the access control, then we can do a module and we implement it. We actually test it so it works in production, and then we propose it to the consortium. Hey, let's make this into the next release. Let's make this official, and then people can, other ones using the ontology can come with improvements, or I mean, they can have their say to actually make it better. So this is quite strong, which means that we don't have to wait for a standardization committee to make a standard. We can build products and put them out to production, and everyone can do that, and then we are just gathering together and trying to see can we bridge them. Of course, there will be some times when we have to backtrack and there was something conflicting, but it's extremely flexible working in this way. And if you're looking a little bit more specific, I could say like you have a couple of important concepts. The one to your and my right is the building structure, and this one is heavily influenced again from the IFC, from the BIM module. So you could, if you're familiar with IFC and BIM, you could see that it's basically that one that is ripped off. And when you're looking at the resources for the RealEstateCore Ontology, you have a folder in GitHub called alignments, and that's where you're putting the alignments between the IFC and the RealEstateCore Ontology, so you can see how they are actually mapping. The other important principle is that we're talking about that we see the world quite simple. We see the world as devices. And a device has one or more sensor and or one or more actuator. And to complicate it, it can actually have another device, a sub-device in itself, of course. But this way, everything we see is either a sensor or it's an actuator. An actuator is a device that actually does something in the real world, turns on the light, connects the electricity for the light, or turn off, open up the valve for the cooling or heating in this location. So, and this, of course, we have not invented this. This is I wouldn't say that uncommon. It's quite common, especially if you're looking at from an IoT perspective. This view of the world. And of course, I could talk for a long time about this one. The development process, we are working quite tight with academia and industry. As I said before, we're working very tight with Linköping University that are quite strong when it comes to semantic web development on a global scale, and we're cooperating with several other with their connection when it comes to other universities globally. And we are also working very much together with the industry. We're working together with large players such as Schneider and Microsoft in order to facilitate the implementations. And as I said before, we build and deploy and iterate. It should be out there, meeting the reality. I don't know if you have been looking at ontology specifications sometimes, you find a lot of them at the W3C, but many times when I try to read some definitions, it can be quite hard to actually try to make a specification and put it into production to some developers that should actually do something about this. So we have quite much friction between all different developers, since there's lots of different partners of, can you really do it like this? And map to existing standard, as I've said before, and modularity. Right now, we are in the making, should have been the last week, hopefully this week, we will be releasing the 3.2, and we will be releasing the sneak preview of the OWL to OAS, to the Open API specification, so you can auto-generate the API direct from the ontology. It's quite nifty, and also that you can, using tags, so you can select what parts of the ontology you want to generate. Again, if you're using your own customized module. We are doing quite much alignments to, I don't know if you're familiar with the SSN, the Semantic Sensor Network ontology, which is a big ontology, W3C, and plenty of others. The brick schema we are doing right now. Brick schema is from Berkeley, and it's being endorsed by the Ashroe, the ones that are behind Haystack, Modbus, and BACnet. If you are into the building automation domain, that's the dominating US standards. And we are doing quite much when it comes to certification. And certification in this case means you are doing some sort of green certifications of the building, sustainability and environment, that you're actually trying to validate that you are actually saving energy in buildings. And if someone is interested in this, I will show you in a while where we have the resources. RealEstateCore is the ontology that I talked quite much about. It's the API specification and the edge message format. And this all together makes up the ecosystem that we as property owner wants. We want to be able to scale out. if many of the large property owners that are in the consortium, I mean, they have hundreds of buildings. They have thousands of different systems. I mean, you must do this efficiently, otherwise it will be too expensive to even think of integrating all your buildings. There are plenty of documentation and tools, and as I said before, we will upload this presentation, but basically you find that we have a website of our own, the RealEstateCore.io, and we have a GitHub where you find all the resources. That's where you will find when the API will be officially released any moment now. And as I said again, it's a non-profit consortium, the RealEstateCore Consortium. It's MIT license, Creative Commons and MIT licenses. So there is quite easy and risk-free to use. And here's an example of, here's actually the founders. But as I said before, we have plenty of quite large industrial players, also big construction companies that are part of the RealEstateCore Consortium. And you also find us in our Gitter community, and here I had just, yeah, it's the same GitHub link. And I think I'm out of time now. I have some extra slides, but I think I'll probably use it. Okay.